Hello, everyone. I'm Mr. Monster. Thanks for stopping by the Mr. Monster YouTube channel. As a reminder, all stories said on this channel were created or written by me. Thanks for listening. Today's story is The Accident. It felt like someone was watching me. That's the only way to describe the sensation, really. I was walking home from work and I got a chill. Not the type of chill one would get in winter, but the kind of chill one gets when seeing something disturbing on TV. In this city, somebody's always watching. Whether it's a stranger zoning deep into thought, or someone intentionally staring at you. Someone is always watching. As I got to my apartment building, the sensation dissipated. Once I was inside, the feeling stopped completely. But multiple days later, I thought about the evening quite a bit. I questioned if I was having some sort of panic attack, but in the end, I always came back to the same conclusion. I did not give myself that sensation. Someone or something else had thrust that sensation upon me. Regardless of the feeling, work needed to be done. So I left and went about my day. Bump! I walked into someone. I lifted my head as I was walking, with it down and apologized. The man gave me an awkward smile, nodded, and went on his way. Something was off about the group around me. They all looked like I had just committed some sort of crime. Jaws hung wide open, eyes wide. One woman even screamed. I looked around at the busy sidewalk to see that it was not me that they were staring at. A cab had crashed into a lamp post, sending it toppling over and landing on a man. The same tall blonde man I had just bumped into. Already, people were surrounding him, and others calling 911. But considering that this was New York, the vast majority of people just walked around the scene without a second thought. Fight or flight kicked in, and I ran away from the scene. I didn't slow down till I felt as though I couldn't take another breath. My lungs were burning. 2 blocks away from the accident, I looked up into a shop window. I saw a frazzled, long-haired brunette with blue eyes and pale skin. The woman in the reflection looked like she was rushing to some important destination, but in reality she was running away from something. My adrenaline was sky high, and I wished that I had simply been running late for work. My long black coat fluttered in the late autumn breeze. Behind me was an average city block. A few dozen people on the sidewalks were going to and fro. A line of honking traffic stopped at the light. 2 trees without leaves, giving all the appearance that this was deep winter, not late fall. And on the edge of my vision, I saw a blond man. That face. That awkward smile. It was the man. The tall, blond man I had bumped into. The one who got hit by a taxi. I spun around. He wasn't there. Not in front of me, not in front of the tree like I had seen. I looked down the street. The ambulance had arrived and was loading a man on a gurney into the vehicle. But they were in no rush. The blanket covering the entire length of the man indicated that there was no one left to save. I must be losing my mind. There was no way that man had been standing behind me. He had died in the accident. Later that night in my apartment, the feeling came back. The feeling of being watched. Drifting off to sleep is when the feeling crept back in. I bolted upright. The hairs on my arms were standing up. I felt terror in the pit of my stomach. The same feeling when a child thinks there's a monster in the closet. I choked down the fear and looked around my room. There was no one. Light from the alarm clock lit up the room. The blue walls were covered with photos of my vacations with friends. My dresser was looking taller with the slight shadow behind it. I knew I was being ridiculous. I was an adult woman, not a child, and there was no monster hiding in my bedroom. With that thought in my head, I got up to go to the bathroom. I splashed my face with some cool water from the sink. I couldn't stop thinking about the accident earlier today. If I hadn't bumped into the tall blond man, he would have been past the point of the streetlight and would still be alive. Was it my fault? Was I to blame for the incident? Surely not. If anybody were to blame, it would have to be the cab driver, right? I didn't know the answer, and regardless, I felt guilt eating away at my insides. Looking up from the sink and into the mirror, I saw him. standing right behind me. Not with the awkward smile of before, but with a crooked one. I turned around. Nothing. I was completely alone. The terror was back in full force. There's no way I'm getting to sleep tonight, I thought. I walked out of the bedroom and turned on the television. I walked out of the bathroom and turned on the television in my bedroom. The accident was on the news. It was odd, though. Things like this happen every day. Why would they be reporting on a car accident? The mutilator, confirmed to have murdered and dismembered 15 women, was killed today in a motor vehicle accident when a cab driver had fallen asleep at the wheel. DNA evidence confirms that this man was indeed the mutilator. The cab driver was not injured. The police are further investigating the mutilator's apartment to check for clues about whether more women were murdered and hidden by him. Fuck. I didn't feel so guilty anymore. Maybe it wasn't my fault at all, and was just karma finally catching up to that bastard. Feeling much better, I went back to bed. The following day was bright and sunny, so I decided to take the subway to go to the zoo, because it was a Saturday, and I didn't have a lot of stuff to do at home. The subway was disgusting. Everyone there looked like a creep, but a police officer also happened to be in the car, so I wasn't too worried. Standing, I held the slimy metal pole to keep my balance. I stared out into the tunnel, and the train was traveling fast now. The next stop was the zoo. In the reflection of the glass yet again was the man, the crooked smile, the squinted eyes. I gasped when I closed my eyes. Then when I reopened them, the man was gone from the reflection, and the police officer was giving me a confused look. The train came to a stop, and I hurried off. Later that night, back at home, I turned on the television. The police had found new evidence. Back at the apartment of the mutilator, now known to be Henry Thompson, the police found photo clippings of housing records of all the victims. It appeared that Mr. Thompson would follow his victims for weeks, staking out their walking paths and their employments, watching and waiting until he would strike. The police also found the whereabouts of 2 missing persons. Thompson had murdered them, chopped them up, and buried them in a graveyard. They believe he did this because his original method of throwing them in the river was catching too much attention. The police also found a list of women he wanted to kill next. The next woman on this list was one Miss Mary Greeneth. I knew it before the TV even uttered the name. It was me. The feeling of being watched was because I was being watched. I had been stalked for weeks by this man. I never even noticed. Not really. Everyone feels paranoid from some time. Everyone feels paranoid sometimes. Hello, a deep voice said from behind me. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. And I turned around. The man, the mutilator, was behind me. I was crying uncontrollably. I started to back up, but tripped and fell. On my back on the floor, I looked up at the man. Blonde hair, blue eyes, a knife, and then nothing. Epilogue. The mutilator has struck again. DNA evidence shows that Henry Thompson did indeed get to his next victim in a bizarre set of circumstances. The police are still baffled due to the fact the murder appeared to have happened Saturday night, even though Thompson died Friday. They believe there to be an error in the DNA testing. Most likely, this was just a copycat killer. Mary Greeneth was killed in her apartment. Her eyes were cut out. Her eyes were cut through, and her body was cut into pieces just as the original killer had done with all the other victims. The police are now looking for a young woman named Jessica Frank, as this was the last name on the killer's list. I hope you guys enjoyed me talking about my story, The Accident, or I guess reading through my story, The Accident. This one I've had for a little while. I know it's quite short, but I think that it's enough to give you a good little shiver down your spine. It was one of my first stories that I wrote, so it's not especially polished, but I still hope you guys enjoyed it nonetheless. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up. If you didn't, or you did, or you want to comment on what you'd like to see more of from this channel, please comment down below. If you'd like to hear more stories like this every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, please subscribe to the channel and turn that notification bell on so you never miss an update. And as always, I am Mr. Monster, and I am out.